Ducky. Ducky, sit down.
Nonverbal communication is such an interesting topic to me because there are so many different ways to communicate nonverbally versus verbally. According to the textbook, there are many different ways that a person can define nonverbal communication. Berg and Bueller and Woodrow define nonverbal communication similar to how we define verbal communication in Chapter 2. They state that the nonverbal behaviors are typically sent with intent and are used with regularity among members of a social community and are typically interpreted as intentional and have consensually recognized interpretations. This isn't the best definition though, because there could be given many different definitions. This is just one of many. So on and so forth. There are very few definitions, but they are all generated from one or the other. There isn't one that is represented in the textbook that wasn't stemmed or branched off of another's definition at some point. The part that really interests me is the communication part itself. The way that an individual can just move their body a certain way or have a specific demeanor about them, and another individual would be able to tell what that individual is trying to communicate. An example that is pointed out in the book is something that I don't really think about often. I am a teacher at a private school, and being able to understand and pick out nonverbal communication is something that is really important. I have to be able to know when something is bothering a child, even if that child doesn't come and verbally tell me that something is bothering them. I believe this is why I take such an interest in nonverbal communication. They use an example similar in the textbook being, for example, professors watch their students with nonverbal communication in the classroom, such as slouching, leaning back in their chair, or looking at their watch. They make assumptions about them, that they are bored, tired, or worrying about another test in a class. These assumptions are often based on acts that are typically done unintentionally. My own example would be when a child is sitting at a table doing their schoolwork and they keep looking down or playing around with their pencil instead of actually doing their schoolwork. Keep in mind, my children are 4 and 5 years old, and when they start to do this, I take that as a hint that they might need help or that they may be tired. So I will approach them using nonverbal communication and try to assess the situation using verbal communication again to figure out what might be bothering them so I can help to fix the issue. Nonverbal communication can be related to verbal communication in so many different ways, but it is actually very different at the same time. Symbols are used in nonverbal communication, very common, as well as even verbal communication too. According to experts, a substantial portion of our communication is nonverbal. Every day we respond to thousands of nonverbal cues and behaviors, including postures, facial expressions, eye gaze, gestures, and tones of voice. From our handshakes to our hairstyles, nonverbal details reveal who we are and impact how we relate to other people. Expressing our feelings through our body language is used a lot more than most people would think. I truly believe that it is easier for an individual to express their feelings non-verbally rather than verbally. If it's something that comes more natural to the mind, and most people think about their words before they come out, and it's easier to express non-verbally. Signs are a type of nonverbal communication as well. Things like the men and women signs on bathroom doors, traffic signs, and even traffic lights. They are considered nonverbal communication because, for example, a green light means go, a red light means stop, and a yellow light means yield. All of these signs and symbols are understood because that is something that is just to be known. Even people that are not driving yet know what these symbols mean. Nonverbal communication provides so many different ways of communication. When comparing to verbal communication, it is just speaking out loud. Nonverbal communication is so much more than that. You have to be able to read someone's emotions without them actually saying it to you out loud. One of the most common gestures used in nonverbal communication is a head shake in the sense of a yes or a no. For example, if someone asks you if you want to go out to dinner with them, your response would be a head shake for a yes or even a head nod for a no. And the person that you are talking to would be able to understand that your response was a yes or a no by looking at you to be able to see that. Vision is something that comes into play with nonverbal communication and is very important. Nonverbal communication is often used to replace verbal communication. Like I mentioned before, instead of replying or responding with the word yes verbally, a person could respond with a head shake for a yes without even actually saying it out loud. Nonverbal cues are also used to complement verbal communication. We don't just use verbal or nonverbal, but they are both oftentimes intertwined with each other and complement each other, like I said before. I am a person that uses both verbal and nonverbal communication at the same time. I feel that it gives my words more emphasis because I use my body to express my words in the same way that I do through my mouth.